Hi, I'm Claire. I am a senior partner at Proclinical Executive Search. Proclinical are one of the biggest global search firms in life sciences, and I'm honored to be joined here today by Megan Bailey. Megan is CEO of Personal Genome Diagnostics. Megan has more than 18 years of leadership experience in the healthcare industry. As CEO of Personal Genome Diagnostics, she leverages her extensive knowledge of clinical diagnostics, business development, and commercialization to lead a team focused on providing precision cancer care solutions that allow patients to have access to best-in-class genomic testing. Prior to her role as CEO, she served as Chief Commercial Officer, leading the company's marketing, sales, and customer support teams, and before that, as Vice President of Marketing. She began her career in diagnostics with Ventana Medical Systems, a company with a patient-focused mission to improve cancer diagnostics globally. Following Roche Diagnostics' acquisition of Ventana in 2008, Megan spent the next 10 years rapidly progressing through commercial leadership roles of increasing responsibility. In her last role at Roche, she served as Senior Director of Commercial Operations, responsible for a $200 million plus portfolio across 4 divisions, addressing multiple disease states and market segments. Within Megan's first year as CEO of Personal Genome Diagnostics, she successfully restructured the overall business and delivered several significant commercial milestones, including the first ever FDA clearance of a comprehensive genomic profiling product, positive Medicare reimbursement coverage, and high impact partnerships with oncology leaders, pharmaceutical partners, and co-development partners. In February 2021, she closed a $103 million Series C financing, the largest round achieved by the company to date, with a new lead investor and blue chip syndicate. Megan is a graduate of United States Military Academy at West Point and earned her Masters of Public Health from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Megan served on the UMB Foundation Board of Trustees and the Army West Point Athletic Association Board of Directors. Megan, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Claire. It's good to talk with you.
Last week, you closed a deal with Labcorp to acquire Personal Genome Diagnostics for close to $600 million. Congratulations. What were the key components that made Personal Genome Diagnostics so attractive to Labcorp?
I would say it's really our technology and kind of the scientific expertise and broad expertise in the organization, regulatory quality, all the things that have to work successfully together to bring innovative products to market. And in this case, we've built products that address precision oncology gaps. So these are tests that can look at hundreds of biomarkers out of a single patient sample, tissue, or blood, identify what's driving a cancer patient's tumor, and direct a targeted therapy against it. And so Labcorp obviously is a market leader in healthcare-related testing services. It has significant commercial and operational kind of infrastructure partnerships reach, and has a similar vision to bring precision medicine closer to all cancer patients wherever they are. And so I think they really saw our innovation and the technology and capabilities in the product pipeline that, combined with their commercial and operational infrastructure, could really help fulfill the vision in an area of really high strategic priority for the organization. So we're thrilled about the combination. As you said, it's quite new. It just closed, so we're moving into the next phase of integration, but really excited about the impact on cancer care that we strive to have together.
So yeah, really finding that gap in the market and addressing that, and then finding a good partner. That sounds incredible. What was the greatest challenge that you had to overcome during? Oh, actually, I wanted to ask you. In 2020, you were appointed CEO of Personal Genome Diagnostics. You initially joined as VP of Marketing. How did you prepare yourself to become CEO, and is it something that you've always wanted to do?
It's a great question, and the honest answer is no, not really. I've never aspired to a title or a role. I'll tell a quick personal story. So I grew up a military brat. My father served 41 years in the military. He ended his career as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and senior military advisor to President Obama. And he went back at one point to speak at the military academy, and one of the cadets asked, "How do I become a 4-star general?" And his response was, really, first, by not striving for that, by that not being your goal. Like, go out and be the best second lieutenant you can be the best platoon leader you can be. The soldiers entrusted to your care are relying on you to be that. And then when you have the privilege of leading at the next level, do the same thing. And so, I learned a lot from that. And I think I've approached my career in a similar manner where every role that I had the opportunity to kind of lead in, I tried to maximize the impact I could have there on both the business, but also the individual people that I led, and fulfillment of their career goals. And I think if you try to collect every bit of experience and learn everything you can from every role and treat everyone, with that level of seriousness, in the end, you end up feeling more prepared for the next thing as a result of that work you put into the one you're in. So I would say that's really been the mentality I have followed, more so than, aspiring to be a CEO. That being said, I guess my other honest part of this answer would be, I'm not sure anything can really prepare you for it. And so I'm sure we'll get into that a bit, but certainly a ton to learn very quickly as I made that transition, because it is a markedly different role in the level of responsibility to the company and employees. But also, as I quickly found out, to the board and shareholders and investors. So certainly a broader scope, and there's, clear learnings in that. But I would say, I really tried to prepare for the role by doing the best job I could in every other role along the career path.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that, because quite often, everybody's aspiring for the next thing. Even as they're going for one role, they're already trying to get the next one. And yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective. That's so helpful. What was the greatest challenge you had to overcome during the transition from CCO to CEO?
Well, for one thing, the timing was quite interesting. So I stepped into the role as CEO in April of 2020, which was, really the first big wave of the pandemic was facing everyone. And so, one, Personal Genome Diagnostics, prior to the Labcorp acquisition, was a small private company, venture capital backed. And, this technology that we were developing and trying to bring to market requires substantial investment. And so, one, the market conditions were making securing that investment more challenging. There were operational considerations around how to run the business, given the situation at the time with COVID, and frankly, in some cases still. And so the truth is the company was in a difficult position, both financially and operationally. And so probably the biggest, learning curve I faced was how to assess a lot of information in a very short amount of time and make pretty broad scale decisions. And I had to do that because of the element of time, which is often a startup's biggest enemy. And I'm fortunate that I came from the role I did to know really, the people through the business, the technology, the partnerships coming from the inside, I think gave me at least the right foundation to assess those things. But seeing the whole puzzle together and knowing that, some pretty significant decisions needed to be made very quickly. You learn that you're never going to have perfect data sets on that. You're never going to have 100% of the information you want. You're never going to be 100% certain that the decisions are right. But I really strove to get the right inputs, both from people and data, make rapid decisions and know that we'll iterate as we go as quickly as we need to kind of get our feet back under us. But, it was an interesting time to step in that regard, because there was, it wasn't a slow learning curve. I will say that. A lot to figure out in a short amount of time just to secure the company's future.
You had a very successful career at Roche for 15 years. It must have been a big move to make at that time. What criteria did you have when considering new career opportunities, and why in the end did you decide to go with Personal Genome Diagnostics?
First, I'll start by saying I have nothing but tremendous things to say about my time at Roche Diagnostics. I mean, it's a fantastic company. It touches patients on a broad scale globally every day. Has great technology and capabilities, and so I'm actually thankful that I spent as much of my career there as I did because I think it was a great training ground. Just the way that business is run and the way that organization brings products to market, you learn a lot from that. Um, that being said, because it's so big in terms of infrastructure and people and systems and processes, you can't make the large scale impact you want at certain levels as fast as you might want to be able to make those. And so, I reached a point in my career where I really wanted to test, could I kind of build and scale something and lead something where I knew every day the decisions that I made or the teams I led and what we contributed or impacted or didn't, would massively change the trajectory of the company. And so, frankly, I was nervous to do it. It was a risky thing to do. I was on a good career path there. It was probably definitely the safer option. But I did I felt like at that stage of my career, I did want more of that kind of test, more of that autonomy and responsibility and direct impact for the success or not of a company and strategy. And then how I assessed personal genome diagnostics is really how I've assessed most things in my life, which is I'm very driven by purpose. And so, I do have a deep passion for oncology. As you mentioned, in my last role at Roche, I had progressed to where I was leading across 4 divisions, great leadership experience, but that took me farther from kind of the core of my passion, which was oncology. I knew PGDx was trying to do something pretty disruptive in the market by bringing this sort of technology to where patients are being seen and treated, where the market paradigm had been very centralized, only a handful of labs that could run these sorts of tests. All the samples had to come to those centralized laboratories. PGDx was and is still aspiring to productize those offerings so that the tests can be run in hospital systems, reference labs, academic centers across the US and across the globe. And so I was captivated by the mission, by the opportunity I thought it represented to really elevate the standard of cancer care for all patients wherever they needed the test and wherever they were seeking treatment. And so I felt like it was a good pairing of a career kind of test I wanted for myself and a mission that I could get behind and believe in. And that's why I made the leap I did.
And I love that you had the courage to just move forward into that. It's a complete unknown, a new role, a new company, and having the courage to do that. So it's excellent. Thinking back on your journey, what are 3 lessons you learned or principles you operate by that you believe are most valuable to run a successful and profitable business?
The first thing I would say is culture. I think so much of a business success comes down to the culture that you set within it. And so, at PGDx, for example, I shared a set of leadership principles that were really a way to try to drive alignment around how we were going to operate together and interact with each other. And they were things like a bias for action, this idea of, we need to trust each other to make the best decisions we can with the information at hand, and show up the next day and do the same. And you have the opportunity to iterate. But if if you're scared to make a decision because you think the minute something doesn't go exactly as planned, somebody will be standing there to critique you, nobody will make a decision in that environment. And so, that was one. We had one around say it in the room, right? If we're having a meeting, we can't have the scenario where the actual meeting happens 5 minutes later in the hallway, right? We've all seen that where it's like somebody had a concern, they didn't raise it at the table. It's raised outside of the conversation. And what does that lead to? Either misalignment or like 5 more meetings to bring it back together versus just saying it, trusting each other to come at decisions with the right intentions, but a different perspective. And that different perspective is exactly why we're all sitting in the room together. So that's just a couple, but I feel strongly that aligning people around a common culture and set of principles and how you're going to operate together is really a core tenet to being successful. The second one, which is really strongly tied to it, but I think is worth saying independently, is mission, like remembering why you're doing what you're doing. Here, obviously, we have one that people are very personally passionate about, and helping cancer patients around the world. And it's those constant reminders and keeping that front of mind for people that I think gets organizations and teams through challenging times. If it was just about the business being successful as a business and financials and those sorts of things, I think when you hit the hardest moments, that's not what people rally around. They rally around why they came to work that day and what the hundreds of products you sold represented in hundreds of patients touched. So I think keeping that, whatever your business is, I think keeping the core of like, why do people want to come work here? What are they here to actually do? Is really important. And then I guess the last one I would say that is more business oriented. You often hear the expression like think big, but act small. I really believe in that as well. You need a vision and you need people to know what we aspire to be 5 years from now. But you only get there by like specific actions and deliverables and progress every single day. And so I think if you don't know where you're going, that's challenging. If you have a vision, but everything in between is a little fuzzy, I don't think you ever fulfill it. And so I think it's really having the balance of those two that that help a team really advance. And in the end, you sort of look up and are able to say, we did what we wanted to do, but it's a daily effort. It's not a quarterly board meeting report. It's like a day-to-day commitment.
Thank you so much for giving the examples of culture too, because quite often we hear that culture is important, but to get it to the point of specifics was really helpful. You sit on the board of University of Maryland. Many women I speak to are looking for their first board position. What advice would you have for them? Is there anything that they can do to prepare, or certain types of people they should reach out to? And how should they present their experience in a way that says they would make a good board member?
Yeah, I think first the question I would ask is, why do you want to be on a board? And then what kind of board? And so it just so happens that the two I serve on right now are nonprofit boards. And the reason I'm on those, one, the UMBF Board of Trustees, University of Maryland Baltimore Foundation, is obviously local here in Baltimore. And, it's really the whole intent of the board is around strategies related to investment into the Baltimore community and philanthropic strategy tied to community initiatives here. And so in my day job here, we're focused on impacting cancer care globally, and that's very motivating to me. But I live in Baltimore. I'm raising sons in Baltimore. And so for me, that one came about because I just started talking to people that I met through work engagements or sports engagements that were from here. I'm not. And just trying to understand like who's doing what, because I felt like a gap for me is I just really wanted a way to invest and be involved in and aware of things happening locally here in Baltimore, where I'm calling home, at least for now. So, and then the other one is the Army Athletic Association Board of Directors. I was an athlete at Army. I feel a lot of who I am as a leader and person, frankly, was framed through my time at the academy. And so that was more a personal connection and just wanting to find a way to give back. So I share those to say, I think it's just important to first assess what is motivating you to want to be on a board, what kind of board. Is it because you're seeking to give in a certain way or be fulfilled in a certain way? Is it for experience, for something else you want to do because you're looking to transition industries for career, and maybe board, is a way to start to gain a network in another industry? I think you have to assess the motivation first. And then a lot of it can happen organically, because once you know that, I think then it's a matter of talking to people who, touch boards and organizations in those areas, and just be open about what you're looking for, and why, and what's motivating you to want to do it. In terms of experience, I would just say a very high level comment, but I think it's about showing your ability to ask the right questions, not really have the right answers. Because from what I've seen, good board dynamics and discussion are about people who ask the question that you weren't thinking about, or maybe ask it in a way that puts a different lens on it. board members that bring their expertise and know what that is and how to help, but just as importantly, know what's not their lane, and try not to drive a leader down a path for something that they maybe don't have experience in to guide you. So I think me becoming CEO and having the opportunity to be on the board at PGDx was also helpful for me to see, like, what do I value in board member input and feedback and perspective, and try to model that. And I really think a lot of it is like seeing things from a broader perspective and asking the right questions just to prompt a different, mindset or thinking pattern around a specific problem or opportunity.
Thanks, Megan. That's so helpful. And yeah, I really love that you mentioned that you're an athlete. I read recently that like many CEOs, female CEOs, have previously been athletes. Can you tell me, how or if that's impacted your experience as a CEO?
Yeah, it certainly has. I think sports teaches so many life lessons and leadership lessons. I mean, one, there's um, a clear discipline around athletics in general, but I would say especially competing at that level. And so again, that ability to like show up for an early morning workout, when you had to study late for a test or got back from a road trip and still had to go to class, and you have to show up and you have to put in the time and effort if you want to compete on the court the way, in my case, is basketball. You want to compete on the court the way you seek to, and win. It's really all the other time that nobody sees, right? The on the court with the fans, like that's the fun time, but it's the weight training sessions and the track sessions and the film sessions, studying tape of the game the night before and all the things you should have done better. So I think that just the discipline around the hard work, and the willingness to like evaluate yourself and see the truth of areas that you need to get better in to be at the level you want to. A lot of that is similar to what you have to do in business. I think there's also the team element. Again, in my case, basketball, but very different roles if you're a post player or a point guard. But if you don't play your role and fulfill your role well, right, you're not going to win a game in most cases because one person shows up, plays a game. It's a team of 5 on the court for a reason. And so I think that mentality has shaped how I lead. I think losing, if you compete, you're going to lose. And I think, again, figuring out like, what do you need to get better at so you win the next time, that constant dealing with failure, and how to adapt and get better. Yeah, I think there's tons of lessons that come from it. And again, in my case, I played at the military academy, which also had a whole host of other lessons related to leadership. And a lot of what I would say a lot of what I drew on, especially in the last 2 years through some pretty tough times, were lessons that I learned now more than 20 years ago through all of that.
That's so inspiring. Thanks, Megan. What can we do as executive level women in the workplace to support the next generation of female leaders?
Yeah, I think first, just like be engaged enough to see talent, and not let that talent hold itself back. I think you probably know the data on this better than I do, but there's some studies about how a woman will read a job description and maybe she meets 9 of 10 qualifications but doesn't meet one, and she won't apply because she's not qualified, right? And similar studies will show often a man will read the same exact set of job qualifications and might meet 5 and says, I'm going to compete for the role. I think we're hard critics on ourselves in a lot of cases, women. You feel like you have to check all the boxes and be fully prepared to take the next step in your career. And so I think one way we can help is just by being more authentic and open ourselves to say, I didn't feel qualified to be CEO when I was asked to be CEO. All I really did was have the courage to say yes, and show up and be willing to draw on all the experience I did have, rely on a great team and learn really quickly. And so maybe that's an extreme example, but I think just encouraging younger female talent that you don't have to have a perfect set of qualifications. It's okay if you don't feel ready to do it, and put some support around them and help, pull people along in a way that lets them not hold themselves back from fulfilling their full potential.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for all of your advice, for taking the time to share your experience. I know many of the women and people in our audience will really appreciate the guidance. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Claire. I appreciate it.